When you're multiplying two fractions, you're just going to multiply across the top and across the bottom, as you see here. So you just have, if you have A over B times C over D, it's just the two things multiplied on top, the two things multiplied on the bottom. You don't need anything like common denominators. You don't need that when you're doing multiplication of fractions. Just multiply across the top, across the bottom, and that would be it. Now, of course, as you're doing that, if there's anything that can be reduced, it's kind of good to do cross reduction as you do that. Now, this first example, we can't really do that here. Nothing you can kind of cross reduce like that right in lowest terms. So in this case, we're just going to multiply across the top and the bottom. So basically, we just end up with 2 times 4 on top and 3 times 5 on the bottom. So we get 8 over 15. That would be it. Nothing else reduces there. And then that would be your answer multiplying those fractions. Let's do this next one here. Okay, now this here, I'm going to do this problem two different ways. So I have 1 times 2 on top over 4 times 3. So if I just do it the same as I did before, I would get 2 over 12, and then a 2 would be the largest number that divides into each of these. So then when I reduce it, I would get 1 over 6 as the answer. Now, if you don't want to do it that way, there is another way you could do this. Now, the other way would be to cross it out and reduce 2 over 4. So the largest number that goes into 2 and 4 that divides in there would be a 2. So I'm going to divide this 2 by a 2, and I get a 1. Divide the 4 by a 2, and I get 2 here. So essentially what that ends up giving me is 1 times 1 in the top and 2 times 3 in the bottom. And lo and behold, I get the same answer, 1 over 6, as to be expected here. So two different ways that you could do that. Now, it's kind of easy. It was easy for us just to do that reducing step at the end because they were small numbers, but some of these might be pretty big numbers. So then it's going to be a lot easier to do it the second way where you kind of cross reduce there, and that's going to make it easier. So let's do as the case I have here. Now this one, again, that would be, you probably don't want to multiply all three of those numbers across and all three numbers in the bottom, because then what's going to happen is you're going to get a pretty big number, and that's going to be really difficult to try and reduce all that. So it's going to be better if you can kind of reduce all those at the same time as you're doing it. All right, so let's go ahead and write all this out. So 33 over 49, and I have 14 over 45. Should I write the problem down correctly? And then I have this. So I want to look for anything that I can reduce, like going across like this. Now, one thing I'll notice, first of all, is 33 and 22. Whenever you see two numbers the same right after each other like that, that means 11 divides in there. So I'm going to divide this by 11, and I'm going to get a 3. Divide that by 11, and I get a 2. All right. So now I want to look at other things. 14 and 49. All right. So both of those, a 7 divides in those evenly. So I'm going to divide 14 by 7, and I get a 2. Divide 49 by 7, and I get a 7. Now let's look at these last two, 45 and 27. 9 would be the largest number that divides into both of these evenly. So 27 divided by 9 is 3. 45 divided by 9 is 5. So then what happens? Well, we get 3 times 2 times 3 on top. On the bottom, we have 7 times 5 times 2 left over right there. So then notice that there actually is one more thing I can divide out here. There's some 2's left over. Okay. Well, now that I can divide by 2 and I get a 1, divide this by 2 and I get a 1. So now I have 3 times 1 times 3 over 7 times 5 times 1, just like that. Okay. Or the ones I wouldn't even need to even write there. Okay. So now I just end up with a 3 over 35. And that would be it. So I didn't even need to use a calculator on that one. I was able to just do all of it just by cross reducing there. So that's a lot easier to do it that way than to try and multiply the big thing on top and the big thing on bottom, because the thing you end up with that's going to be so big of a number, it's going to be really hard to write out all the factors and know how that's going to reduce. That's why this is so much easier just to do the cross reducing on that if you can. So each one, just go ahead and cross reduce it until you get it down to something that doesn't reduce anymore. Let's try one more of those where we have to reduce. Let's do this one here. Okay. And so if we do that, all right, so I'm going to write this out separately so you can see what the original problem was here that I'm doing. So doing that, 8 over 65. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, again, we look for things that we can cross reduce and cancel. Well, I noticed that both of these end in a 5, a 15 and a 65, so that would be a good place to start. So what you could do is you could actually see, if you're not sure by hand, you could always just do 65 divided by 15 off to the side and see if that reduces, and it doesn't. So I know that 15, I can't cross this out and make it a 1 and divide this out because 15 doesn't go into 65 evenly. So because that doesn't work, well, then let's try a 3. We know, or a 5 rather. Because it ends in a 5, I know that they're going to be divisible by 5. So let's divide each of these by a 5 first. Divide that by 5 when we get a 3. And then I want to divide 65 by 5. So if I divide 65 by 5, we get 13. Okay. So that's good. That doesn't go down anymore. All right. Now next, let's do a next one. 26 and 9, I can't do anything with. And so let's do, with this, I have an 8 and a 44 here. A 4 would divide evenly into both of those. That's the largest number that would go in there. I could also divide each of these by a 2 if I wanted to. I could do that as well if I wanted. So I do have a choice there on what to do. Okay, so let's do the 4. Divide this by 4, we get a 2. Divide this by 4, we get an 11. All right, so that's what we have. So let's you know what, let's instead of making this is going to look more unclear if I try doing more reducing on that. Let's just rewrite out what we have so far, and that way we can do some more reducing over here in this next step. Now I do see some more things that I can reduce. I got a 3 and a 9, so divide 3 goes into both of those. That's a 1, and that's going to be a 3 there. I also noticed that 13 would divide into 26. So 26 divided by 13 would give me a 2. 13 divided by 13 would give me a 1. So now I would have a 2 times 1 times 2 on top. On the bottom, I have a 3 times 11 times 1. And then nothing else reduces here with that. Multiply across the top, I get a 4. Across the bottom, I get 33, which means that would be my final answer. 4 over 33, that would be reduced. So all these, you want to make sure you write your answers in lowest terms because that's what it'll be asking you to do for the homework.